Hello everyone and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham and we're coming to you live from the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. And coming up, we've got the latest on the stories from the United States and around the world. Before that, here's a look at the latest headlines. Iran's foreign ministry firmly denies any plans to suspend its uranium enrichment, dismissing reports of such a move as totally false as nuclear negotiations with the United States continues. Israel's foreign minister hails U.S. President Donald Trump's stance on Israel and anti-Semitism, calling his administration a strong ally during a visit from U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Finland summons Russian envoy after two Russian military planes allegedly violated its airspace last week. Finland's move marks a fresh strain in relations since the country joined NATO back in 2023. King Charles lands in Ottawa today for a landmark visit to open Canada's parliament and deliver a speech. The trip comes amid rising tensions with the United States over Trump's annexation rhetoric. And Saudi Arabia plans to end its decades-long alcohol ban by 2026, allowing limited sales at select tourist hubs as part of its broader strategy to attract global visitors ahead of the 2034 FIFA World Cup. We start with the latest on the war in Europe. In the wake of Russia's massive overnight assault on Ukraine, President Donald Trump slammed Russian President Vladimir Putin, warning that Putin's desire to capture Ukraine could lead to Russia's ultimate downfall. Taking to his social media platform, Truth Social, President Trump called Putin absolutely crazy. But even as the president took aim at Putin, he didn't spare Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky either, claiming that his public statements are hindering peace talks. This criticism came just hours after Ukraine faced its biggest aerial attack since Russia's full-scale invasion back in 2022. Now, according to Ukrainian officials, Russia launched nearly 370 missiles and drones across the country overnight on Sunday, killing at least 12 people and wounding dozens more. Air raid sirens blared throughout the night as projectiles rained down. Children were among the injured, and hospitals in cities like Kharkiv and Zaporizhia struggled to cope. Meanwhile, Moscow's mayor claimed that two Ukrainian drones heading towards the Russian capital were shot down with no injuries reported. During a press briefing on Sunday, President Trump once again reiterated his disapproval of the ongoing Russian onslaught and said this.
I'll give you an update. I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all.
The president was also asked if he'd support imposing more sanctions on Russia, and he responded.
You mentioned you're unhappy with President Putin. You've talked before about putting more sanctions on Russia. Is that something you're considering more serious?
Absolutely. He's killing a lot of people. I don't know what's wrong with him. What the hell happened to him, right? He's killing a lot of people. I'm not happy about that. Go ahead. What else? Anything else?
Under President Trump's leadership, Washington has been pushing for a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia, but a breakthrough has remained out of reach so far. Last week, President Trump held a 2.5-hour phone call with Putin, claiming that negotiations on a truce would begin immediately.
Spent 2.5 hours talking to Vladimir Putin, and I think some progress has been made. It's a terrible situation going on over there. 5,000 young people every single week are being killed. So hopefully we did something.
Now, Ukraine has agreed to a 30-day ceasefire, and Putin has said Russia will work with Kyiv on a memorandum for a future peace accord. But as of now, Russia controls around 20% of Ukrainian territory, including Crimea, which it annexed back in 2014. And while direct peace talks have resumed in Turkey, the bombing continues with civilians still paying the heaviest price. And staying with the war in Europe, tensions escalated even further as Russian military commander claimed that President Vladimir Putin's helicopter was nearly struck during a Ukrainian drone attack just last week. The alleged incident occurred in Kursk Oblast, a region near the Ukrainian border that has seen heavy fighting in recent months. Yuri Dashkin, commander of an air defense division in the area, told Russian news agency RBC that Putin's aircraft was flying through the region when a large-scale Ukrainian drone offensive began. He said the Russian leader's helicopter was, quote-unquote, effectively at the epicenter of the attack and that Russian air defenses intercepted drones approaching the flight path. The Russian commander further reported that between May 20th and 22nd, Russia faced an intense wave of drone assaults from Ukraine, with more than 1,100 drones allegedly destroyed during that period. Now, specifically on May 20th, the day of Putin's visit to the Kursk region, he claimed that 46 drones were shot down by Russian forces, one of which was detected heading directly towards the area where Putin's helicopter was in fact flying.
I would like to point out that the intensity of the attack significantly increased during the flight of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief's aircraft over the territory of the Kursk region. Therefore, we were simultaneously engaged in an air battle and ensured the safety of the president's helicopter in the airspace.
Now, there were no injuries or damage reported during the incident, and Putin's convoy reportedly continued without interruption. However, Russian authorities have not provided additional evidence or independent confirmation of the attack, and the Kremlin has remained silent on the matter as well. In fact, apart from Russia, even Ukrainian officials have not commented on the claims. However, analysts cited by the Kyiv Independent suggested the story may serve a political purpose. By portraying Putin as being under direct threat, the narrative could be used to rally domestic support and reinforce the image of the president as a hands-on leader in a high-risk conflict zone. The situation in Kursk has, in fact, remained volatile since August of last year when Ukrainian forces launched a rare cross-border incursion, the first major military advancement into Russian territory since World War II. Now, Ukrainian troops held parts of the region for months until a large-scale Russian counteroffensive supported by North Korean forces pushed them back in March of 2025. But just last week, during his meeting with government officials, Putin said that Russia is creating a buffer zone along its frontier with Ukraine.
As I said earlier, the decision to create a necessary buffer security zone along borders with Ukraine had been already made. Our armed forces are accomplishing this task now. Enemy firing points are being suppressed. The work is proceeding.
So whether this was an attempted assassination or something else entirely, one thing is clear: the war is far, far from over. A 28-year-old dual citizen of the United States and Germany has been charged with a disturbing plot to attack the U.S. Embassy's Tel Aviv branch. Federal officials say Joseph Neumeyer carried Molotov cocktails in a backpack and posted online threats just hours before the attempted attack. He was then arrested in Israel, deported to the United States in New York, and is now in federal custody. Neumeyer also allegedly made direct threats to assassinate President Donald Trump and Tesla CEO Elon Musk. The Justice Department and FBI have condemned the act as a serious threat to American lives and diplomacy abroad. Our story has more.
A 28-year-old dual U.S.-German citizen is facing federal charges after allegedly trying to firebomb a U.S. diplomatic facility in Tel Aviv last week. The Justice Department confirmed on Sunday that Joseph Neumeyer was arrested at New York's JFK airport after being deported by Israeli authorities. Now, the incident took place on May 19th outside the former U.S. Embassy building in Tel Aviv, which now serves as a consular office. According to prosecutors, Neumeyer approached the building with a backpack and spat on the security guard. And when the guard attempted to stop him, Neumeyer ran, dropping the backpack. Inside his backpack were 3 glass bottles filled with alcohol and at least one fitted with a cloth wick, which is a classic component of Molotov cocktails. Israeli bomb squad officers examined the contents and confirmed they were incendiary devices.
Without provocation, Neumeyer spit on an embassy guard as he walked past. Neumeyer managed to break free as the guard attempted to detain him, leaving behind his backpack. A search of Neumeyer's backpack revealed 3 rudimentary, improvised incendiary devices commonly known as Molotov cocktails.
Neumeyer was then tracked down using security camera footage. Israeli police found him at a nearby hotel just 5 blocks away. He reportedly told officers he had packed Molotov cocktail bottles filled with vodka. Now, according to the Justice Department, Neumeyer had arrived in Israel a few weeks earlier in April. He had previously lived in Colorado and was still registered to vote there in 2023. Officials say he had left the US earlier this year and had been in Israel only for a month. However, his online activity raised further alarms. Hours before the attack, Neumeyer allegedly posted on Facebook, "Join me as I burn down the embassy in Tel Aviv, death to America." In fact, in his other posts, he threatened President Donald Trump and Tesla CEO Elon Musk. In one post addressed directly to the Justice Department, Neumeyer warned that Trump had several hours to resign or certain death.
This defendant is charged with planning a devastating attack targeting our embassy in Israel, threatening death to Americans and President Trump's life. The department will not tolerate such violence and will prosecute this defendant to the fullest extent of the law.
After his arrest in Israel, Neumeyer was deported and taken into FDI custody upon his arrival in New York. He appeared in federal court in Brooklyn on Sunday, where the magistrate ordered him to be held without bail. Neumeyer now faces serious charges including attempted arson, possession of explosive devices, and threats against a US president. If convicted, he could face up to 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. The embassy plot came just 2 days before another violent attack involving Israeli officials. On May 21st, Yaron Lischinski and Sarah Lynn Milgrim, 2 Israeli embassy employees, were shot and killed outside a reception at the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. The alleged shooter was heard shouting "Free Palestine" during the assault.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
However, authorities have said there is no known link between the 2 incidents. So for now, Neumeyer remains in federal custody in New York, and to date, no defense attorney has been publicly identified. The case is ongoing.
And in Latin America, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's ruling party secured a sweeping victory in Sunday's regional and parliamentary elections, which were boycotted by the country's main opposition alliance. Now, according to the National Electoral Council, or the CNE, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela won 23 out of 24 governorships, and it received more than 80% of the votes for the National Assembly party list.
With a transmission of voting machines corresponding to 93.01% of the polling stations and a participation of 42.63% of active voters, we have to decide for the position of deputies from the nationally allocated list. The Great Patriotic Poll Alliance obtained 4,553,484 votes, corresponding to 82.68% of the total votes.
To all Venezuelans, this victory is the victory of peace and stability for all of Venezuela.
The vote, however, was marred by low turnout and accusations of repression. Just over 42% of Venezuelans' 21 million eligible voters cast ballots, a sharp drop compared to the July 2024 presidential election. Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado had called for a boycott, describing the vote as a farce and urging citizens not to participate. Now, the run-up to the election saw a fresh wave of crackdowns, with more than 70 people arrested for allegedly plotting to disrupt the vote. Among them was opposition figure Juan Pablo Guanipa, accused of leading a terrorist network aimed at sabotaging the process. Now, despite the boycott and international criticism, President Maduro hailed the outcome as a victory of peace and stability. He claimed it showed the enduring strength of Chavismo, the populist socialist movement founded by late Hugo Chavez.
After 32 continuous elections, after blockade, criminal sanctions, fascism, and violence, Today, the Bolivarian Revolution has shown that it is more valid and stronger than ever. Today, we have demonstrated the power of Chavismo, of Bolivarianism of the 21st century.
The election included 285 parliamentary seats and 24 governorships. It also included, for the first time, a vote in Essequibo, a disputed oil-rich territory controlled by neighboring Guyana but claimed by Venezuela. Public trust in Venezuela's electoral system has eroded further since the controversial 2024 presidential election. And while electoral authorities swiftly declared Maduro the winner of a third term, the opposition released its own results showing a clear victory for their candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez. Now, that outcome triggered nationwide protests, leaving 28 people dead and hundreds jailed. But on Sunday, ahead of the final tally, President Maduro dismissed the opposition's absence and said, quote, when the opponent withdraws from the field, we advance and occupy the terrain. Machado posted photos of nearly empty polling stations on social media and renewed her call for the armed forces to take action. With faith in Venezuela's democracy fading fast, the latest vote has only deepened the country's political divide. And finally, 5 years ago, the world watched in horror as George Floyd gasped for breath under the knee of a Minneapolis police officer. His final words, "I can't breathe," echoed across continents and into history. On Sunday, his family and communities nationwide gathered in remembrance, with many asking, has anything really changed? Our final report looks at the fight for justice that was ignited by George Floyd's death, which now stands at a crossroads.
Five years after George Floyd's murder shocked the world, Americans gathered in solemn remembrance. From the Minneapolis intersection where he drew his last breath to the hospital where he now rests. While heartfelt tributes poured in and crowds rallied for justice, the momentum for lasting police reform appears to be losing steam. In Minneapolis, the site of Floyd's killing by former police officer Derek Chauvin became the heart of the annual Rise and Remember festival. George Floyd Square, once a makeshift memorial, hosted a gospel concert, a church service, and calls to action from activists and community leaders. Simultaneously, in Floyd's hometown of Houston, family, friends, and local leaders gathered near his gravesite. Civil rights leader Reverend Al Sharpton led a memorial service, urging political leaders to finish what began in 2020, meaningful and enforceable police reform.
It was 1955 when they started the Montgomery bus boycott. We didn't get the Civil Rights Act in Congress until 1964. They kept fighting for 9 years, and they never gave up. And we 5 years later will not give up. They can cancel consent decrees, but they can't stop us from implementing them. The mayor of Minneapolis said they're going to abide by it anyway. We're going to keep the pressure on. In Georgia's name, policing will not be the same in the United States of America.
Floyd, a black man, was killed in May 2020 after Chauvin, a white Minneapolis police officer, knelt on his neck for over 9 minutes during an arrest. Floyd was arrested after a store worker reported that he made a purchase using a counterfeit $20 bill. This incident, captured on a bystander's phone, ignited worldwide protests. It also renewed urgency to confront racial injustice and police brutality. Chauvin was sentenced to over 2 decades in prison, and several other officers involved were also convicted for failing to intervene. The protests, dubbed the Black Lives Matter Summer, spurred a brief flurry of policy action. Under then-President Joe Biden, the Justice Department launched civil rights investigations into police departments in Minneapolis, Louisville, Phoenix, and Lexington, Mississippi. Investigations uncovered systemic misconduct, leading to federal oversight agreements requiring better training, data collection, and accountability. But in 2025, those efforts are hitting resistance. President Donald Trump, who's now back in office, has declared many of these reforms flawed and unnecessary. His administration dismissed the Justice Department's findings as based on incomplete data and claimed that consent decrees were handcuffing local police. Trump's administration is also dismantling the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Initiative, or the DEI, many of which were adopted in the wake of Floyd's death. In Washington, D.C., the mayor removed the iconic Black Lives Matter mural, which once adorned a street near the White House. And in a symbolic blow in Floyd's hometown, a mural dedicated to him was destroyed during a building demolition. The mood across the country is now marked by a complicated blend of remembrance, frustration, and fading hope. For many, Floyd's death anniversary isn't just a memorial, it's a reminder of promises unkept and justice still out of reach. The question now is, will the memory of George Floyd continue to drive change, or will it be buried along with him under the weight of political backlash and public fatigue?
That's our show for today. We certainly thank all of you for tuning in. We hope you have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.